Come one, come all. Come with your missing pieces and your extra screws. Come with your hard edges and your soft spots. Come with your bowed heads and your upright spines. Come flamboyant and drab, verbose and quiet, fidgety or lethargic. All you with large vision and tender hearts. All you with small courage and tender fears. Bring your lisp and your stutter and your song. Bring your gravel and your drawl and your lilt. Bring your anger and your joy and your righteous indignation. Misfits and conformists and everyone in between, come into this space and be welcome. Bring who you are. Bring where you've been. Bring what you long for. And let us worship together this morning. These words from Ian Riddle welcome all those who have gathered this morning for our Sunday service. Welcome to those of you here in the building here at Essex Church. Welcome to everyone who's joining us from far and wide via Zoom, and indeed anyone who's joining us via YouTube or the podcast stream at a later date. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name is Jane Blackall and I am minister with Kensington Unitarians. This morning's service is titled Anger is an Energy. This topic was suggested by our own Alex Brianson, who will be joining us via Zoom later on in the service to share his own personal reflections on the topic. I think many of us will have internalised a message at some time in our life that there's something wrong with anger, that we should suppress it or moderate it, but of course it has its place within the full spectrum of human emotion. And as Glennon Doyle says in the words that are on the front of the order of service today, the only people who have ever changed the world were people who were pissed off, people who stopped trying to manage their anger, fix their anger, struggle with their anger, and instead embraced their anger, harnessed their anger with other angry people, and unleashed it in creative ways to make change. But before we go any further, let's do what we always do. Let's light our chalice flame. This is a little moment for us to really arrive, to centre ourselves, to let down anything that we've brought in that's aggravating us, and maybe just take a simple breath or two. And as we light this chalice, let this ritual join us with solidarity with Unitarians and Unitarian Universalists the world over, and let it remind us of the proudly progressive religious tradition of which this gathering is part. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. And we light this traditional beacon of hope as a sign of our quest for truth and meaning, and in celebration of this life that we share together. Time to sing. Our first hymn this morning is in your purple books, number 196. We sing the faith. If you're on Zoom, the words will come up on screen for all the hymns today. Feel free to stand or sit as you prefer. We don't have Benji to help us this morning, so let us do our best and sing up as best we can. Hymn number 196.
Amen.
So let's take all of those joys and concerns, both spoken and unspoken, into an extended time of prayer now. You might want to adjust your position to get more comfortable. You might want to close your eyes. Perhaps there's some posture that helps you to feel more grounded, centred. Whatever helps you to get into the right state of body and mind for us to feel fully present with ourselves, each other, and that which lies within us and beyond us. Spirit of life, God of all love, in whom we live and move and have our being, we turn our full attention to you, the light within and without, as we tune into the depths of this life and the greater wisdom to which and through which we are all intimately connected. Be with us now as we allow ourselves to drop into the silence and the stillness at the very centre of our being. Let us speak plainly and from the heart in prayer, tuning into our true feelings this morning as best we can, and laying them honestly before the one who listens with endless compassion. There is no need for us to hold back, be restrained, or put on a brave face before God. Some of us are feeling weary right now, worn down and depleted by world events or the trials of our own personal lives. Perhaps we've been carrying too much for too long. Some of us face the sickness and suffering of loved ones or ourselves. Some face money worries. Some are lonely and troubled. Some overwhelmed and confused. Some frustrated and angry. We do our best to keep on top of all the challenges that we face in the course of ordinary life. And still we are mindful of all those who are struggling in even tougher circumstances all over the world. And so in a few quiet moments, let us bring to mind all those situations and people and places that are weighing on our hearts this morning. And let us inwardly pray for the help that we long for as well. Despite everything, we can still find moments to treasure in our days, things to be grateful for. For friends and family, reaching out to lift our spirits and to remind us that we are loved. For neighbours and strangers, looking out for one another and weaving the fabric of community. For the courageous campaigners and activists who act and speak to bring about a better world. For learning and for laughter, and for all the natural beauty that surrounds us in this spring season. And for the new possibilities that are forever emerging, new ways of seeing and being, and the hope of change. In a few more quiet moments now, let us bring to mind all those people and places and experiences that have brought light to our lives this week. And let us give thanks inwardly for all these gifts. Spirit of life, God of all love. As this time of prayer draws to a close, we offer up our joys and our concerns, our hopes and our fears, our beauty and our brokenness, and we call on you for insight, healing and renewal. As we look forward now to the coming week, help us to live well each day and be our best selves, using our unique gifts in the service of love, justice and peace. Amen.
Harnessing Our Anger by Glennon Doyle. Author and podcaster Glennon Doyle responded to a question from a listener back in 2020. This person asked, "I'm really struggling with my anger lately. I just feel angry all the time. What's wrong with me?" Glennon Doyle responded, "There is nothing wrong with you because you are angry. Anger is a normal human emotion, a normal human instructional emotion, just like joy. It's just that women, just like every marginalized group, are trained and tamed to be ashamed of their anger. It's important for every single marginalized group to be trained and told over and over again that if they are angry, that means there's something wrong with them. Why would power structures want marginalized groups to believe that their anger is something to be ashamed of? Because people who do not struggle with their anger, but instead embrace their anger and harness their anger, are people who demand change. The only people who have ever changed the world were people who were pissed off and who stopped trying to manage their anger or fix their anger or struggle with their anger, and instead embraced their anger, harnessed their anger with other angry people and unleashed it in creative ways to make change. What if, instead of struggling with our anger, we consider that when we feel angry inside, maybe it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with us. Maybe it means that there's something wrong. Not wrong with us, wrong out there. Something that we might be able to help change. Women, from time immemorial, have been gaslit by the entire world. Every time they felt angry, someone tells them they're crazy. The truth is that angry women are not broken. They are just some of the only people who are responding appropriately to a broken world. Most of my activism in the world is done because I have trusted my anger. Because when I get pissed off, I just assume that there's something to be pissed off about. And I find other pissed off people, and we pull together our genius and our talents and our resources and our energy, and we unleash it. The really cool thing about anger is that when you use it out there, it disappears for a while. When you stop swallowing it over and over again, and studying it and trying not to be it and feeling ashamed of it and not speaking your truth, when you use it, it's fuel. It burns up, and then you just settle back down until you get pissed off again.
Thanks, Lochlann. Time to sing again now. Our second hymn is number 11 in your purple hymn books. Quite a gentle and soothing hymn for a day when we're thinking about anger. Blessed Spirit of my life, hymn number 11.
We're going to hear 3 short poems connected to our theme now. The first 2 were chosen by Alex, and he'll say more about them in his reflection later on. They're all printed on the insert in your order of service, if you want to refer to them later or to follow along as we read them. The first poem is Cross That Line by Naomi Shihab Nye. Paul Robeson stood on the northern border of the USA and sang into Canada, where a vast audience sat on folding chairs waiting to hear him. He sang into Canada. His voice left the USA when his body was not allowed to cross that line. Remind us again, brave friend, what countries may we sing into? What lines should we all be crossing? What songs travel towards us from far away to deepen our days?
This is an excerpt from Mental Fight by Ben Ockrey. Everyone loves a spring cleaning. Let's have a humanity cleaning. Open up history's chamber of horrors and clear out the skeletons behind the mirrors. Put our breeding nightmares to flight. Transform our monsters with our light. Clear out the stables in our celebrated fables. A giant cleaning is no mean undertaking. A cleaning of pogroms and fears, of genocide and tears, of torture and slavery, hatred and brutality. Let's turn around and face them. Let's turn around and face them, the bullies that our pasts have become. Let's turn around and face them. Let's make this clearing out moment a legendary material atonement.
And our third poem is Useful Anger by Stephen M. Schick. This poem is by University Minister Stephen Schick, and it's prefaced by a quote by Marge Piercy. A good anger swallowed clots the blood to slime. Stephen Schick continues, but what is to be done with it, this anger that dare not be swallowed? Should it be diluted with denial, cooled with indifference? Should it be sweetened with good intentions, softened with lies? Should it be spewed out red hot over searing tongues, scorching the guilty and innocent alike? What's to be done with it, this anger that dare not be swallowed? Don't dilute it, deny it, or cool it. Don't sweeten it or soften it, but pause for a moment. Could you hold it before your eyes? Examine it with your heart and mind. Could you hold it, then touch it to your belly, that place where your soul rests? Could you let it enter there, knowing it is part of you that needs to be treated kindly, that needs to be listened to, that needs to be honoured? For it has the power to save you, to save us all.
Thank you, David and Patricia and Brian. So we're moving into a time of meditation now. And to take us into the shared silence, I'm going to share a fairly extended guided meditation from Laura Mancuso. It's called My Commitments to Myself, and it's like a series of affirmations and encouragements and reminders for practicing self-care so that we can live well and feel all our feelings even when times are challenging. We'll move from the spoken meditation into a few minutes of silence, which will end with the sound of our bell, and then we're going to hear some more music for continued meditation from Georgia and Andrew. So again, do what you need to get comfortable. You might want to put down anything you don't need to hold. The words are just an offering. Feel free to use this time to meditate in your own way. So as I share each of these commitments, I invite you to take them in, maybe inwardly repeat them to yourself. I take care of myself first, because I am deserving of exquisite care. I take care of myself to maintain the capacity to help others. I attend to the needs of my body and move and stretch every day. I spend time outdoors in nature, attuning my senses to the earth's wisdom. I ration my daily exposure to the news and am discerning about credible sources of information. I protect myself from becoming overwhelmed by disturbing reports. I pace myself. I sit with the reality of uncertainty and impermanence and allow it to temper my desire for control. I listen to others' reactions, which may be different from mine, with equanimity. I forgive myself and others when stress brings out our shadow selves. I feel fear fully when I am fearful. I experience sadness fully when I am sad. I allow anger fully when I am angry. I relish joy fully when I am joyful. I seek out healthy pleasures and I indulge in them without guilt. I remind myself that feelings are transient states that move through me. They do not last, they do not define me, and nor do my thoughts. I balance the urge for self-improvement with compassionate acceptance of myself as I am. I initiate contact with loved ones near and far to let them know I hold them in my heart. I seek out with increased sensitivity those who are the most vulnerable. If possible, I share my resources with those who need help to survive. I move away from people, situations, and experiences that do not serve the highest good. I strengthen my connection to sources of spiritual strength so that I may be replenished. I acknowledge the nearness of death as a spur for living a full life now. I grieve my losses and celebrate my successes. I pray for the suffering of all beings to cease. and I remain open to new ways of being, surprising sources of uplift and joy, and fresh discovery every day. This piece on the gift of anger by Julie Ewan Kim, a Korean-American artist, educator and preacher. I think probably not a UU preacher, but this piece was published by the Unitarian Universalist Association just this January as Trump's second presidential term was about to begin. She writes, "When I was sent to the principal's office in the second grade for pointing out my teacher's conspicuous favoritism, my parents wondered aloud what to do with me. What followed was a lifelong lesson about the tricky balance between message and method, how not to deliver the right message in the wrong way. My parents have taught me, sometimes using words, that telling the truth will cost me something, that wisdom is the negotiation of minimizing or avoiding that cost. Be careful with the truth, they said. People who don't like it will just call you angry." When the United States elected its 45th president, I encountered something for which my parents' lessons had not prepared me. People rarely wanted to hear the truth about a man as told by a woman. I learned that women who share their truth are dismissed as being dramatic or too angry. It took so little to be ignored, yet so much to be heeded. I did it anyway. I named the willing seduction of American evangelicalism, already one of the most powerful religious institutions in the world and greedy for more power. I pointed out the silent moderacy of the Christian majority as the enemy of their purportedly beloved gospel. I also examined my own contribution to American evangelicalism, silent moderacy, and quests for power and stability. I've received countless reminders to be a Christian, a godly woman, and to show grace. Terms describing something more like a sedated animal disconnected from its own sense of anger than a human afraid about the future. These people read my anger as a disqualifier of reasonableness. Even in monstrous times, I'm expected to be respectable and respectful. My anger dissolved in a string of soft words. But anger is not at all what people think it is. Anger has been kind and caring to me. When, as an undocumented woman, I felt most vulnerable to the former and future president's rhetoric and policies, anger was the sign of my will to survive. Outrage on my behalf was hope for our collective futures. More often than not, in the secret center of anger is not a desire to destroy, but to protect those it loves. It wraps itself around a vulnerable area, like a body turned into a shield for its friends. Julie Ewan Kim closes with a few words of prayer. God, who inspires and anoints our anger, give us the ability to discern this gift, to discipline and harness it with righteousness. Just as joy without spine and love without resolve are empty, so too is struggle without anger. Teach us this lesson. Give us this gift. Amen.
To start with, I want to ask a question, though I suspect I might know the answer already. I wonder if you are like me and you're veering between despair and anger these days. And they say you should never talk in polite company about religion or politics. And I'm afraid I'm going to do both this morning. Now, I imagine since we're all in a service, you're okay with the first part. And if you're not at ease with the second part, the politics, then I'm sorry to make you uncomfortable. But there are worse things than being uncomfortable in the world, and we need to talk about them, even here on a Sunday morning. I think maybe especially here and in places like this on a Sunday morning. The world is on fire. Climate change continues to be unaddressed, and the wider ecological crises are deepening yet further. There's Trump and the full-on Nazification of the US. And he's not on his own. There are authoritarians and reactionaries in power in so many places. Putin, Netanyahu, Orban, and that's just 3. Here in the UK, we have a government that doesn't seem to know what Labour Party means and is throwing the elderly and the poor, the disabled and the ill to the wolves. Makes me despair sometimes. And I know all about despair. I've witnessed about that here before. I've found it to be a powerful but glutinous and suffocating force. And I know for long experience that I don't want it. I don't want it for you either. I suppose I have known it to be perversely comforting because it's so familiar. And sometimes despair brings you right back to the point when you felt justified. You might as well give up because there's no point trying. The bad guys always win in the end. And sometimes struggle just seems like an endless cycle. I don't know whether you've all seen the various Star Wars movies. I love them. But one of the things that really struck me from watching them is how, despite all the drama in the original movies, you've got Luke and Leia, Han Solo and Chewie and all the rest of them struggling with the bad guys. You think finally they've won, and then the next generation just has to do it all again. Fighting for justice is hard. It's easy to get overwhelmed. You have to be persistent, and sometimes, frankly, that is exhausting. So I'm left sitting with my anger this morning. I think it's justified, given everything that's happening around us, in order to protect and further enrich the already powerful. So I'm enjoying it. I say, hello, anger. Come and sit with me for a while. Like we've heard already this morning, we're not supposed to enjoy our anger, are we? We're supposed to be into anger management, calm ourselves down, wait until you're more considered, count to 10. Those who fight fire with fire end up with ashes. Whatever. My attitude towards anger, mine and other people's, changed in 2 stages. The first was about my own life. I was diagnosed as autistic when I was 48, and that led me to a fair amount of exploration. I realized as part of that trying to suppress my anger and frustration often made me go into shutdown mode, and that in turn led to depression and other illnesses. It's far better for me psychologically to let rip, to process and express my anger, and then maybe, if need be, make reparations afterwards. Now, I'm an adult, so I don't give myself carte blanche about that. But there are times when anger has to be expressed, and it's actively harmful not to do that. So I try to do this more than I used to, just as I try not to let things reach boiling point if I can help it. The second stage was about my spiritual life. Now, I have to say here that I have learned the usefulness of meditation, about using it to calm the nervous system and to give myself a clearer mind. I'm rather fond of meditation, which is just as well because I do it 3 times a day. I can vouch for it. But all that said, when I think about Jesus and his religious career, I'm currently much more in tune with him in his era of the social justice rabbi wreaking justified fury on the usurers in the temple than I am with gentle Jesus, meek and mild. The guy was a subversive. Yes, of course he preached and acted about love, and that matters hugely. He did turn the other cheek. But he also knew how to channel anger at injustice, and that's what I want to do. It's what I want all of us to do. Naomi Shihab Nye's poem is an understated barb about racism, about the oppression of minorities, and the capacity of people to organize and oppose them. Paul Robeson was at the time banned from travel overseas during the McCarthy-era United States, so trade unions organized a concert for him at the border with Canada underneath the Peace Arch on that border. Sometimes I wonder whether we should have a similar concert today, just to remind President Trump that there is such a thing as a US-Canada border. And Ben Okri's poem tells us to see humanity's darkness and to refuse to flinch from it. It's time, he says, to spring clean not just our homes, but our souls. We need to make amends for the wrongs we've done as a species, to ourselves, to those we call others, and to our planet, as well as all our fellow dwellers on her. I pray about this most days. But Okri also reminds us that we have the capacity to transform, to be better, but only if we face up to what we've done collectively. The economy that we have is rigged in favour of the rich and of the richer countries. The relative social mobility, equal rights for women and people of colour and LGBTQ people, and the relative comfort of the welfare state, all these things are historically unusual, and they still exist only in a few countries of the world. In many of those, it's under threat. It's even under threat here. So what about anger? How do we use it? I think there are several ways we can use our anger. The first is to realize and accept that anger is absolutely brilliant for cutting through despair. I know a lot of my own depression in the past was congealed anger, and fury is a wonderful antidote to feeling helpless. So feel the fury, taste it, accept it. Secondly, harness your anger wisely. This is the trick, of course. Sometimes there's a rush from being Jesus in the temple, but none of us can really sustain that healthily for long. It curdles and becomes exhausting as well as badly focused. Jesus, remember, used anger as a tool, not as a constant tactic or as a value. We need to use it as a way to diagnose what's wrong in our world and determine to do something about that. People of colour have often led the way in this in forms of religious life and been joined by feminist or womanist activists of faith, as well as those from the queer community. This fire is at the heart of the liberation theology developed in South America to protest about injustice within national borders, in institutions such as churches, and between nation states. It's at the heart of our own Unitarian movement too. Third, we have to know that anger is a spark whose fire gives light but must be tamed to be effective in the long term. Anger must bring us to take action, but then morph into compassion. We all have our shadow side, and without integrating it honestly, we can find it controlling us. And that leads to the kind of anger shown by Trump's followers, the so-called MAGAs. And that's not where we want to end up. I'm going to end with a few words of prayer. Spirit of life, Goddess of all love, help us to feel and process our anger with all that is unjust. Help us to focus it wisely. May it fuel us for courageous action. And when its usefulness is over, help us transform it into compassion. Compassion for our own shortcomings and for those of others. So may it be. Amen.
Thank you, Alex. Time for our last hymn now. It's number 200 in your purple books. What does the Lord require? We don't sing this one often, so Andrew's going to play it through before we sing. Hymn number 200. Just a few announcements then. Thanks to Ramona for tech hosting and Lochlann for stepping in at the last to co-host online. Thanks to Alex for his reflection and for suggesting the theme. To Lochlann, Brian, Patricia and David for reading. Thanks to Georgia and Andrew for lovely music. Thanks to Julia for greeting, and Liz is just about to go and put the kettle on. If you're staying for tea, we also have old favourite apple and sultana cake this week. Tonight and Friday at 7, we've got our Heart and Soul... No, hang on, have I got that right? Yes, tonight and Friday at 7, we've got Heart and Soul Contemplative Spiritual Gathering. This week we're considering surprise. Email me for the link if you want to join for that. We've got plenty of space this evening. On Wednesday, Brian is leading the poetry group. Have a word with Brian. That's in person here at the church, 7 o'clock. Let him know what poems you want to share. The Better World Book Club this month is about The Life Inside by Andy West, a really interesting account of someone teaching philosophy in prison. I think all our loan copies have gone now, but if you're struggling to get one and you'd like one, let me know and we'll see what we can do. That's on the 27th of April on Zoom. We've got our Easter service and congregational lunch coming up on the 20th. Have a word with Liz to let her know what food or drink you're able to bring for the lunch. And looking even further ahead, we've got our tea dance on the 4th of May, which is also my birthday party secretly, so do come along to that if you can. We're currently doing our membership drive for 2025. Have a look at the Friday email. If you haven't already filled in the form for this year, please do. We like you to renew your details every year so that we're on top of your preferences. And it's not about the money. It's about pledging your support for this congregation and all that we do. Next Sunday, we'll be back for a service on the sacred. And there's one bonus announcement. Heidi asked me to remind you that her exhibition with Roy of paintings and sculptures and photographs is coming up. Is that this week or next? It's pretty soon anyway. The details of that are also in the Friday email, and she's left some little flyers hanging around. The congregation very much has a life beyond Sunday morning, so let's keep in touch, do what we can to nurture supportive connections. Just time for our closing words and closing music then. Our time of worship draws to a close. May what we have found here of truth and beauty, insight and challenge, love and comfort go with us as we go our separate ways. And may the blessing of this time together light our way through the week ahead, calling from us the strength and the courage that we need to meet the days to come. Amen.